wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Toronto Till I Die. This is the show for Toronto FC fans, talking all things, the highs, the lows of our beloved Toronto Football Club. In this episode, we get into award season with this year's Waking the Red Toronto FC Awards for 2022. We finish our end of season grading looking at Bob Bradley and Bill Manning and social media trolling. Is it good to be doing that when you finish second last to a team that just bowed out in the conference semifinals? We'll have a little bit of a chat about that. As always, my host, Jeffrey P. Nesker, is with us. We have no Mike Singh today, so hopefully we'll have Mikey back next week. But JPN, how you doing? How was your weekend, buddy?
Oh, it was great. I was up in Pembroke for a weekend helping my buddy record his fifth record at a studio up there. So, got to play gopher, got to play with cameras, got to play with fun guitars, and, got to drink my face off in beautiful Pembroke, Ontario. So nice. Lots of fun. We realized that it's been a year ongoing doing this sort of project on the 4.5 hour ride up. Hey, some people go hunting. We go record music in Pembroke, Ontario. So, that's just what we do. Yeah.
Hey, man, I feel like that's I feel like that's a healthier way to expend your energy.
I don't think you saw the empties, but yeah, it's certainly, I'm going to go with healthier, Mike. Let's go with that.
Just take that and run, man. Take that. And run.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My weekend was good. I did my other job during the weekend and watch Forge take on Cavalry in the CPL semifinals. For those that are watching the CPL playoffs, they've been great so far this year. Both semifinals were fantastic. And obviously it's great, at least from my perspective, to see Forge back in another CPL final, which means I get to go to Ottawa next weekend.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
Playoffs,
with the team or of your own volition?
Probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
A little bit of column B.
Yeah, we're not quite sure yet. We'll figure it out. But looking forward to that. Hopefully it's 3 and 4 for Forge. It's a really, really exciting time in the Hammer. Plus we're probably getting a new mayor today, so that will be interesting.
So are we. I've got to go vote after I finish this. I'm not looking forward to it because timing has created that wonderful situation where we've got to be with the other plebes trying to vote at rush hour. So that'll be great.
I got mine done this morning, so out of the way.
Yeah. Well, I saw your tweets this morning, or at least over the weekend. It seems you were quite enthralled with a certain young child in his Ghostbusters costume at the Forge game over the weekend. That being said, what a costume. Holy crap, that kid. So yeah.
Before we get into the show itself, I got to tell you that this kid had maybe one of the best costumes I have ever seen.
Wow.
The picture does not do it justice. This kid's proton pack was phenomenal. I was mad jealous of this kid yesterday. I'm just like, that good parenting.
That's the only thing. That's your only. Get him a good costume, a good cosplay, or a good SAS cosplay costume, and parenting awards go out as far as
exactly. Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
Good to know.
But I'm throwing it over to you, buddy. We got these WTR awards. I'm looking forward to this, man, because there's some really good pieces we could take out of.
Yeah. I mean, we got the timing right like twice out of the 5 years that we've done this, and then of course since we've been doing this component, we've got the timing right once. So unfortunately, this isn't going to be Mitch, Mike, and I in suit jackets like it was the first time we did this with all kinds of video hits that I made up, and that's my fault. I just haven't had the time to do it this year. But what we're going to say is that we're going to do this half-assed in the same way as the club sort of played half-assed this year. So, the cause equals effect. That being said, this is always a good time. It allows us to get our hot takes out of the way, be as irreverent as possible, which if you follow WTR is one of the fun aspects of being involved in that circle, in that sphere. And so this really allows us to sort of look back on the season. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of inertia from off the back of two relatively terrible seasons already. But this is also the first year several people at WTR, including yourself, had a chance to vote. So we'll do it sort of by letting you drive and you kind of filling in the white areas, or the gray areas in terms of why you chose what you chose, and then see what kind of surprises
Absolutely, let's go for it.
We can unearth. So the first one's one of my favorites. It's the Dandy Dichio Seat Cushion Award for the best goal scored, and this one was easy. This one was super easy. I guess start by telling us who you chose.
Well, I think everybody here chose Criscito's volley. I mean, how could you not, really, in the end of the day? I have a personal sort of love for Jaden Nelson's sort of 40-yard steal the ball screamer against
that was a good
RSL earlier in the year. But I mean, the technique on that hit, I mean, it should have been goal of the year. I think Joseph Martinez's flying side volley was selected as MLS goal of the year. So this did not win. But I mean, like, look, it's a thing of beauty. The cross is great. I believe from Bernadeschi, and the just sort of the audacity to just do that, right? To try it.
To even try it is just obscene. And then to land it, I mean, you're not going to see a goal like that for another bunch of years. And you watch a lot of football, and I watch a lot of football. That's how special this goal was. So it goes as no surprise that just about every last person polled, including the people in WTR. Of course, we only gave them one option, but 100% Domenico Criscito versus New England. Some of the best comments. We had Corey Brady come in and say, Criscito's left foot volley, if you don't think that it's amazing, go to your local pitch and just try it. You'll pull your hamstring like I did. And I think that's fair. I mean, this is elite level football. You could make an argument that this isn't something he tries in Serie A. I could possibly be along for that argument, but you want guys that excel in the top tier leagues when they come to Toronto to let their freak flag fly. And it's not just exclusive to Toronto. I would say it's MLS wide. You want these guys to try things that they wouldn't necessarily try, playing for bigger clubs in top tier leagues. And I think this is a dictionary definition example of such. Like, what a goal, and forget about any of the faff in the context, forget about the fact that this is a left back, forget about age. That's a hell of a goal. And then it's just made even more special when you bring in all the other stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's just also the timing of the goal, right? Like, it's a tie. It's something that like gets you back into the game. Like, it was a fantastic time to get that goal that it seemingly came out of nothing as well. In terms of just how the team was playing up until that moment, and then
absolutely
he just hits that. And I mean, I was at the cottage that week, so I wasn't at BMO, but I was watching it on TV. And my in-laws, my family are around, and none of them are football people, right? None of them really give a shit. Like, they don't care. And then I he hits that volley, and I audibly went, like, one of those audible noises. Like, what's going on? And of course, like, you see it, and even they appreciated the fact that he hit that first time top in too, right? Like, it's not a freak one, it's top in. So fantastic.
No, there was some venom in that. So congratulations to Domenico Criscito for winning this year's Danny Dichio Seat Cushion Award for best goal.
We'll keep him around. He's not going to retire now that he's got that.
Now, this one is going to be tough only because pronouncing the guy's name is a conundrum. But the next note is the next award was the Paul Mariner Best Finish of the Modern Era Award for the worst goal conceded. I voted for, of course, Ricky Puig. And that dagger in the 89th on the August 31, final nail in the coffin of the playoff hopes. I got a little cute and I said it was when LA Galaxy's new / other former Barcelona man mercifully ended our stretch run playoff hopes. I know you voted differently here, so explain yourself.
I did. I went with what I think a lot of people will end up. And there were some really good shouts in here, to be honest. Like, some people had Puerta's hat trick goal in Atlanta, center back on 3 headers hat trick, which is embarrassing in itself. Some people picked a San Jose equalizer at home earlier in the season. I went with Squid Hands. I went with Alex Bono, and just, like, it's one of those goals where, look, it happens. Goalkeepers have clangers all the time. but that one, just the way it happened, when it happened, the fact that TFC were actually playing well up until that point in the game, it like you could just see the momentum and the team just deflate
Yeah.
afterwards, and they
Yeah.
just couldn't get it back, and that to me, it killed the stretch run. Like that was the
Yeah.
moment, because they really need to go to Miami and get points in
Yeah.
that match. And really, after that, I really think that was the point where the team, I think, mailed it in. I think at that point they're like, we're not making
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you
One
get
of
sort
one
the
of my
run. Yeah, and you get the run
yeah.
that ends up happening to the end of the season. So that was my
And
choice.
it also it also unlocked God mode with that player, Ricky Pooch. Like they had brought him over, and that was his first real goal action for the team. And then, of course, he was responsible for the Galaxy stretch run into the playoffs. I mean, obviously, they didn't do as well as the fan base and the front office and the team would have hoped, but it certainly had an inverse effect on their season than it did on ours. I'm happy to tell you that my shout got 21% of the vote. Juan Purata at Atlanta United, strangely enough, only 3% of the vote. I figured that the fan base would have been more upset at a center back hat trick off set plays and headers, but there you go. The winner was your shout, Jean Mata at Inter Miami, and I believe that's not the last we'll see the Squid Hands goal come up in these awards. So congratulations, Jean Mata. I mean, slight congratulations, but
yeah,
you win the Paul Mariner Best Finish of the Modern Era Award for 2022.
Can I make a quick shout out for the third place here, which is Kai Kamara's goal against for CF Montreal against Toronto FC at BMO Field? Mm-hmm. A lot of people pointed to that as the season killer or the playoff run killer, just because of the way Chris Mavinga got sort of manhandled by Kai Kamara on the goal. We talked about it on the podcast. We talked about it on the Tunnel Club, but that was going to be my other choice if I didn't choose the Squid Hands goal, just simply because the manner at which they conceded the 2-goal lead, that one was that's a backbreaker.
It really was. Yeah. It really was. I'm weird about Kai because there's still a part of me that says as long as he's playing, we're going to get him for a season. I mean, I think we may be the last MLS side to get Kai Kamara for a run of games. So
Kai Kamara's going to play until he's like 45. Like he's
absolutely,
he's got one of those freak youth genes that he can still jump really well, still really strong, finishes really well in MLS. He can play as long as he wants in this league, and he'll get a contract.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to see him put on a TFC shirt for a season, maybe next season. Who knows? He may win the best goal next season anyway. Yeah. Third award is one of my favorites. It's the Victor Vasquez Flamenco Dancer Award for Best Play. Of course, I went with Bradley's number 9, which was Bradley's stint as number 9 during the Charlotte game. I thought that was unbelievable. I've got to do my due diligence here and start hiding block porn users in our chat, which is always fun. Who did you choose?
I went a little bit differently. It's a fantastic goal. Obviously, the build-up play to that goal is probably...
Oh, you cheated. You did too. You had 2 shouts.
I did do 2 shouts. I did cheat a little bit. So my first choice was Oso's goal in Nashville on Great the road. Goal. The connection between himself and Richie Larea down the flank. That's classic Richie to Oso. Oso getting the late run. And slotting it, but I actually am going to put this goal over that one, and I'm actually going to take Jaden Nelson's 40-yard strike against RSL, and for the simple reason at that point, it's a game in which it's easy for young players to hide at that moment, and instead he stepped up, took the ball off Herrera, I believe. And of course he could have stopped, right? Because a lot of people were paying for a foul on that play, but he kept going and just hit a lovely strike. And you wish you could see a little bit more of that out of Jaden, and not necessarily 40-yard screamers, but you want to see him shoot more and shoot with a little bit more venom. So you're hoping that he develops that over the next into next season, but that will probably be I picked 2. I'm taking that as my
cool. Choice. Cool. I mean, it's impossible for me to choose any other than Michael Bradley turning back the years and that unbelievable run and that tidy little finish. The votes were pretty split here. after the top. Obviously, my shout, Michael Bradley, wins with 74% of the vote. And then next up is Jonathan Osorio with 10%, and your shout, Jaden, only got 4%. So it's a bit of a split. Congratulations are in order to the general, to Michael Bradley, MB4. Wonderful strike. I mean, look at what this guy's got in his locker. Certainly, if you add context, it's a game that we'd already won. But you can't overlook individual moments of brilliance like that, especially from a guy who's constantly getting told, the wheel of time is breaking on him. This felt like a vintage Bradley surprise, and long. I think we've already decided in our hearts that we're going to see a lot more Braders next year. So let's have another one of these, as opposed to a turnover that leads to goal action on the other end. Let's have a few more of these.
A little bit more of those. I mean, I think what makes it, obviously the move, the passing, interplay into the box, but it's the chip too. It's you've got that in your locker too, right?
100%. 100%.
A lot of people probably would thought he would try to side foot that or side
of course
that in the corner, but no, just a little delicate chip over the goalkeeper. Fantastic finish. Yeah,
proper striker instincts, slowed down time in the box to make the right decision. Whereas, many number sixes, defensive midfielders, if they're in that position, are going to panic and just try to slam it in and go for power. So, I mean, that's why it's so special. Into the negative again, we've got the Get Defoe Out of Here award for worst play. I went with, just trying to remember, I kind of cheated a bit. I wrote, pick your goalkeeper gaff from this collection of hundreds, or don't, period, maybe don't. Obviously, the lion's share of WTR staffers went for squid hands. And then you went for something interesting, and I appreciate this shout. And so explain yourself with this one.
Yeah, so with my choice, I went with the away game in Chicago, which I mentioned, I think, later on in the poll as well. But I think this is actually the game where I knew for sure Toronto FC were not going to make the playoffs. So this is the game just before the Charlotte game. It was maybe the worst performance of the season. I know we lost 4-0 to Orlando, and a lot of people are going to pick that as the worst performance. But I think this one was terrible just because it was kind of heartbreaking to watch. This team was never in it against a team that wasn't that good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
But Duran, just absolutely running circles around Chris Mavinga was, it was just unbelievable. I mean, getting torched by him twice, essentially on what is essentially the same kind of play.
Well, it speaks to the fear, he's our speediest, paciest center back, right? And if he can't handle, Chicago Fire middle of the summer for whatever reason, there's a certain existential crisis that I think we all felt that you're communicating. It's like, if we can't find a way against the Chicago Fire at this juncture, what possible chances do we have? And it's interesting that the Charlotte game, which was the beacon of false hope, was next up, right? I think the team felt it themselves. They had to get better. And of course, it was in spurts. The Charlotte game was as much of an outlier as the Chicago Fire game was. But I agree with you. I mean, this was a tough game to watch. And it asked a lot of questions that we thought we had answers for. It revealed some weaknesses that we didn't think we had to account for, on top of other weaknesses that we knew we had to account for. So I agree. It was a harbinger of doom. 100%.
Yeah, and I think the frustrating part of why I ended up picking this goal is that essentially Chris Mavinga was beaten twice on this same exact play, stepping to a player that he knew he couldn't keep pace with, and he just spun him and took off. And it's just one of those things where I think on the second goal, I think is just a look from, I believe, Shane O'Neill that was on the pitch. Was like, what are you doing? Like, it was just one of those kind of looks. And it was just, that was the moment where I'm like, this team isn't going to make it.
They're not going to find it. They're not finding a way.
Even with Lorenzo Insigne coming in at that point, Bernardeschi, had been announced at that point, or was announced that week.
He had, yes.
So even at that point, I'm like, wow, if they do make it, it's going to be a miracle run. But yeah, that's the game I point to a lot.
Unsurprisingly, you only got 7 votes with that show.
No, that's fair.
76 votes and 92% of the poll went to Squid Hands, at Inter Miami, as it was wont to do. I mean, you put that in a poll, it's going to win. And I mean, that goal was just bad. It was really, really bad. And so deservedly, Alex Bono wins the Get the Foe Out of Here award for the worst play of 2022. This is an award that refuses to die, and mostly because of me, but the Seba Things Award, Best Sebastian Giovinco Thing, just, it's cute, and I know he's been away from the club for a while, but he consistently brings us more Seba things. There hasn't been a year. Every year I think it's going to die. Something happens, and we have
we ever talked about a player more that doesn't actually play for our team?
I think deservedly so. They're still talking about Alan Shearer at Newcastle, and Seb is kind of that guy for us, right? They still talk about Thierry Henry and Patrice Vieira at my club, 2 points clear at the top. Sorry for the draw over the weekend, but Seba is on the wall of honor. No one is going to say otherwise. And as long as he's a Torontonian, he lives here. He's made this his forever home. So even if in 2026 the Seba Thing Award goes to the Americano that he ordered at Zaza that one of us witnessed, I think this award should never die. Just for the shenanigans. My shout was signing for Sampdoria instead of us. Just kidding. And yours was probably the most prescient of the shouts. We don't open this up to polls, but it's we'll just get it out of the way. You said talking to the press. It helped me reaffirm my position that he shouldn't be re-signed by TFC. I applaud your honesty. When I read through this as editor, I'm like, oh, he gets the vibe here. He's not afraid to go for the unpopular opinion, and I think you're right. We've had years of this now, where Seba, and it's impossible to not feel a bit arrogant. I did a Spaces with Dwayne Rollins over the weekend, actually on the GO train to the first leg of this trip to Pembroke, and I almost want to say, unfortunately, we brought up Mavinga's recent Twitter cryptic thread of 1,000 sorrows. Seba is just as guilty for, I guess, lessening that length between dirty laundry as a private concern to going public on all social medias, right? And they play together, and certainly I don't like that this guy thinks that he can air his grievances in the court of public opinion as often as he does. But, when you preach it's all for the badge, and then do things that are absolutely sacrosanct to that. It's all for me. It's all for my eventual. And I'm not talking about Chris now. I'm talking about Seba. Yeah. Right. It screams of arrogance, and it also stokes this fire of a certain contingent of TFC land that are willing to ignore the last, favorably 3 years of Seba's inactivity as a football player and still see him as the man to rescue this club from its own, rescue this club, full stop.
But that's why he does it, right? Because he knows.
Of course, that's why he does it.
That's why you say my opinion is an unpopular one, because it's because people would take him back in a second, and I get why. Like, I 100% get why. I
almost want to see it happen just to shut that contingent up. Yeah,
exactly. Well, there's a little part of me also that's like, well, okay, if he's standing over a free kick, 20 or 25 yards from goal, okay. But
Seven Nation Army's happening. It's here. Right, it comes. I've waited a long time. But
at the same time, I think we just have to remember that for a lot of the people that want him back, their minds go back to 2017, 2016 Giovinco. He's not that guy anymore, right?
He hasn't been that guy in a long time.
He hasn't been that guy in a while, and from there's a reason he's not signed to a club at the moment, right? It's
100%.
So for me, it's just one of those things where, I mean, I get it. He's going to talk to the press. He's going to try to use whatever angle to get himself another contract. I understand that. But at the same time, it's like either it's going to happen or it's not going to happen. And at this point, I just want to stop talking about it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, and it won't stop. And I think that's why it's so unfavorable to me. Like, there should be a higher degree of, it's just too convenient, and it feels like a Hail Mary desperation pass. And it is besmirching his legacy in some ways to the same degree as his exit, which was very acrimonious. It wasn't the best exit.
Is probably the right word.
Yeah. So yeah, long may the award win. But considering that we didn't pull it, I'm giving it to you. You win this one, and that's the best Seba thing of 2022 season. The D Rose John Hancock Award, best goal celebration. We've got quite a few Insigne shouts, but I think the clear winner is my shout. I said Federico pulling a Josmer and bowing to the crowd. You got to love this guy. The awards are going to bear out just how loved he is for his half season in Toronto. And this is the first example. You went for Cozy Thompson's goal celebration, so pure, and I agree. Andrew Hawkenridge went for Ralph Prezio's slide for his goal against Atlanta United.
Great knee slide. Great.
But I don't think there's any argument here, and the polls bear that out. Yeah. Precio got 18%. Insigne versus Portland got 14%. Cozy, your shout, got 5%. But, Bernardeschi versus Charlotte got 62% of the vote. So it's fair to say that Federico Bernardeschi takes goal celebration of the year. He wins the D Rose John Hancock Award for best goal celebration 2022.
Congratulations.
He's going to win again, because next up is the Stephen Caldwell Quality Award, Qualité Award for favorite player. I got a little cheeky. I said Andrea Bellotti. Come on, it's Federico Bernardeschi by a mile. And then we just basically used the rest of the column to link to tweets of all the fun stuff that Federico Bernardeschi has done over the years. Starting at the T-shirt that Primo gave away that I had to run around BMO to get because I refused to go home empty-handed. So, I'm sweating my balls off, running from like gate 3.5 all the way to gate 1, finally find one, get it, very, very happy. You've got his English lesson, which is an all-timer in Toronto FC social media. You've got, what Annie Hart did for the Banner Factory, the Come On TFC, which is also an all-timer. You've got Bernardeschi figuring out what shorty means and just mangling it. Another all-timer. Somebody brought up the him modeling for the I'm going to say OVO again, or OVO.
You were going to say OVO. OVO.
Yeah, OVO. There you go. And then someone even posted, his white suit press conference leading the crowd who just met in a cheer. You just to be different, I'll go Oso, but you knew that this was going to Federico.
I get it. I mean, like you said, How can you not like the guy? Right? It's just one of those things where he has brought pure joy in a season that did not have a lot of those moments.
Yeah, 100%.
And you completely understand why people are gravitating to him in such a short period of time. I just went with Oso. This is more of a respect thing for a guy who's been a soldier for the club for 10 years, right? So
100%. And 16% of the vote agreed with you.
Yeah, for sure. 1%. And he was our best player this year.
Yeah.
Overall,
without question,
he was our best player.
Without question.
Fede,
so,
I have no problem with Fede winning this thing.
This is one of the first places that I'm going to stop for a little bit of a discussion. So we had 1% of the vote to Crescido, 16 to Oso, 83 screaming win. Stephen Caldwell Award for favorite player goes to Federico Bernardeschi. Nobody brought up the $14 million man. And I find that interesting. I don't know if I was surprised, but I do find it interesting.
It's interesting.
Language barrier, expectation, performance on the field, probably a collision of all three of those and a million other little variables. But that is the reality. He swooped in under the radar and won our hearts and minds. Whereas, the guy that we did the significant, and again, $6 million is no slouch in MLS, but it's not $14 million a season. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not surprised, actually, that Insigne didn't make this list or wasn't considered a favorite player. I think the price tag is going to hang over his head a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little unjust, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Exactly. And I think that because he had been billed as the guy for more than half a year since January, right? I think that a lot of people expected right away. I guess they kind of expect like his first game. A lot of people probably expected like a Pozuelo type of first game where everything just works out perfectly. And let's be real here, he was really good in that Charlotte game. Like he was fantastic in that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what this town also really likes is people that they feel are relatable to them. And I think the fact that one, Bernardeschi already came speaking a bit of English and was making efforts to learn English. Obviously, that is a bit of a PR move, but it's also a bit of a lifestyle thing for him, right? I think people feel like they can connect to Federico Bernardeschi a little bit more than Lorenzo Insigne, even though Federico Bernardeschi is also a multimillionaire, right?
Yeah,
I feel like fans feel like there is a bit of a barrier around Lorenzo.
A pedestal. We put him on a pedestal.
And some of that is real, right? Like you've been to BMO. I've seen him around. Like there is a barrier. Like you can't access him like you could access Seba or Josie in town or Michael Bradley when they were here.
Sure.
Right? You feel like you can go have a beer and watch a Leaf game with Bernardeschi, right? You can't do that.
No, I mean, he does all the time.
He really does all the time.
Yeah.
But like, you just feel like you can't quite do that with Lorenzo Insigne. And I think whether, again, fairly or not, I can't judge. I think it's a little unfair on Lorenzo, but I think for a lot of fans that matters. And I think it reflects in this poll.
It's so interesting to me because we have a serious contingent of WTR lifers that are 100% about the Italians. I mean, they're very much of the bring Seba back regardless, let's turn the clock back and live in 2017. And they were very, very, very pro Insigne Bernardeschi arriving. So to me, it was doubly surprising. I think the most surprising thing about this whole, how this all worked out was not only the writers sort of ignored Insigne. We didn't even appear on the poll, but we didn't get a lot of slap back in the comment section or in other avenues about how much we were ignoring him. So that to me communicated that this was kind of unilateral, which I found very strange. You usually have, this is an anonymous poll. You can be as contrary as you like. And the fact that nobody from all corners of TFC land, and again, I may be overestimating, WTR's reach, but we've been at it for enough of a time that I think we get a proper scope of the fan base. We never got any flack for this, which speaks to just how much Bernardeschi has ran away with our hearts, and also gives me concerns moving forward. I mean, this isn't how they drew it up on the whiteboard with respect to how these players would hit. So that maybe speaks to lack of planning. In the front office,
Yeah, and I think I'll bring up one other thing here, and I think this might have contributed a little bit to this. There's two things. One, I think a lot of people thought Lorenzo Insigne underperformed this season, and again, I don't think that's fair. I think he actually played relatively well. But I also think that a lot of people were kind of turned off by the marketing of Lorenzo Insigne when he got here. Whether it was the event in Little Italy or the documentary or all these things where you felt like Lorenzo Insigne was kind of being pushed in your face. In a sense, a lot of people see this as a marketing signing more than
resisted
exactly. And
they went for the hipster pick. Bernardeschi became the hipster pick, and I guess Toronto's fandom is a lot of hipsters. So we overwhelming hipster pick here, but it is interesting. It is very, very interesting. And I think that's as much as we should say on that.
Yeah, I'll just leave this. I would love to hear from the listeners, whether you're listening to this live or eventually on the podcast version, on what your thoughts on that, especially around that marketing angle around Lorenzo Insigne.
Well, we've got
there's a pushback.
I mean, we've got Graham Reed here, and Graham said He's given us 2 comments. I'll read them both. I love Lorenzo and I don't mind his low-key personality with the fans' media, but when you see him in pics videos with his teammates, he's always laughing and playing. And they followed it up with his teammates like him, and I think that's most important.
Very true.
I think it's very important.
Yeah.
But you cannot, form and function cannot be separated here. Cause and effect cannot be separated here, right? Like, if this is all great that his teammates love him, you could make the argument that that's most important, but not in a room full of TFC MLSE brass, because this represents a loss. This represents, less than what was expected in terms of the full court press that signing Lorenzo Insigne and that cost outlay represents, right? When you sign somebody for that kind of money and you spend that kind of budget on marketing the player, you don't necessarily expect something like this to happen where they're not top dog with respect to TFC and their influence in fandom and the media, right? This will be seen as a loss in someone in that building, 100%.
Yeah, I would be interested to see how this changes in next season. I think this will drastically change next season. One, because there will be more time for Lorenzo to perform, but I also think that by then he might have learned a little bit more English. I think he might be a little bit more approachable from a media perspective. And yes, Gary's right. Like, from a team perspective and on-pitch perspective, that's the most important thing.
Sure.
But when you're talking about sort of, this award, this poll is based on fandom, right? And part of the reason that Lorenzo Insigne was signed was to market the club, get more people to attend games,
100%,
raise the profile of Toronto FC from a business perspective. And right, if the guy that you signed, that was I hope we get to sign him, and then things worked out and you could, ends up being the face, I think that's still a win for TFC, but it just probably doesn't go quite the way they had, like you said, drew it up.
Yeah. And you're talking about people with binders and plans that I would hope are discussed and labored over to the nth degree, right? So it does suggest that something's not computing. You always have to leave variables for chaos, but this was a relatively expensive cost outlay, and certainly it's not firing on all thrusters, as evidenced by what we're talking about here. Is it a 5-alarm fire? Absolutely not. Is Bernardeschi a pleasant surprise? Absolutely. But like you said, it will be really interesting to see how the club utilizes both of these tools, both of these players signed for relatively the same span of time, as the marketing push continues next season. Do we see less and less of Lorenzo? Does he become kind of like the silent, moody guy, the Josie to Seba, or I mean, I guess the Seba to Josie, because at the top level of their time together here, I think Josie was more the media darling than Seba was. That's debatable. Andy at Play offers, the only issue I find is how he conducts himself after matches. Subbed often goes to the dressing room versus sitting with teammates. He's had a tough year. I don't know if that's necessarily because he's upset or if, he needs to get on the phone to consult family members and that sort of thing. And I really don't want to speculate here, which is why I kind of want to close the book on this. But it is surprising. And it's gonna rear itself later on as we tear through the awards. Graham agrees with us. He can see TFC giving Federico a heavier burden in terms of club promotion next year, because you run with the hot hands, and certainly
and he's open to do it too, right? Like, there are a lot of players that do not like doing public stuff.
Yeah.
Right? It is like
he may be more agreeable to it than Lorenzo, and even Lorenzo that's fluent in English, he may be more open to doing it, and that's just simply personality based, right? Yeah. And who knows, Lorenzo may be happy to cede this responsibility and live on the pitch and let Federico do the Instagram and all the other stuff. Who the hell knows? This may be a happy accident, but certainly it gives you pause when you see it read out so expressively, in a fan poll such as this. Moving on, the Danny Kuberman's Award for favorite opposing player. We got lots of different shouts here. And I'll only go through the top 2. Ricky Pooch was got 10% of the vote. Kamal Miller / Alistair Johnston were sort of tied together because they play for Montreal, and I think that's fair in a TFC-centric poll. They got 32% of the vote, which is surprising for a TFC Homer site.
Yeah,
and we'll feed into segment 3 that we talk about later.
Has a lot to do with that too.
Exactly. I don't think it's any surprise that the favorite opposing player is our former number 10, now Inter Miami's number 10, Alejandro Pozuelo. Interesting with Alejandro Pozuelo.
Weird to me. That's weird to me.
It is weird to me.
Because that's the guy everybody wanted to get rid of.
Well, I mean, I don't think we wanted to get rid of... I'm speaking for myself here. I don't think we wanted to get rid of him as much as we just realized it wasn't working. And this club has been so much on the other side of making those decisions quickly that we appreciated the quick decision. His words on the way out, did he do an Instagram goodbye or anything? I don't think he did.
No, I think he did.
Okay.
I can't
because remember. I remember telling my wife when we signed him from Genk, all of that faff, leaving Genk as their captain, the way that he left. I said, we're hiring an assassin. So when it's our turn to be on the receiving end of the player leaving, I think we need to remember that this is an assassin. This is a hired gun he's not the Bernardeschi. Like he's not, he'll say nice things about the city he's in, but it's not, he's here to play soccer and collect a paycheck. And when that road ends, he's quick to lace his boots up and throw all his clothes in a suitcase and get the hell out of town. And I think we saw that. He didn't leave with, kisses and love you guys, et cetera, et cetera. The mood had soured, and so it is surprising that he's our favorite. But I think the caveat here is that when we say favorite opposing player, it can be the guy you love to hate. So it's not about, giving Paz hugs. And certainly he wouldn't be up for him. I mean, his return to BMO with Inter Miami was one of the least fanfare I've ever seen. Like his name was announced by the announcer, and I think he pretended to not hear it. So yeah, I'm gonna chalk this up as the guy you love to hate. I think most of the fandom was smart enough to realize that it wasn't working out with Bob Bradley. The player needed to move for the player and the club. 38% is a respectable win. So, Pazzo takes home one more TFC award in 2022. And he wins the Danny Kuverman's award for favorite opposing goalkeeper. Do you have anything to add on that?
No, not really. I mean, I think that it's to me a little bit surprising, just simply because, again, it was a player that, like I said,
started the year
with us, and also not wanted to, but like we just realized we had to get rid of. I picked Thiago Almada from Atlanta because he tore us apart. And he's the kind of player that I wish we had, but we don't yet. We'll see again how Lorenzo picks up, because I feel like that he can provide a similar type of play, but that's the hope for 2023. Yeah.
Absolutely. Moving on, the Stephen Fry Award for favorite opposing goalkeeper. I got cheeky and I said our own goalkeepers 2 seasons running. You went super homer. You went with the job pick. You went Tristan Henry, which I think is
should be up for goalkeeper of the year in the CPL. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Dane St. Clair won. 37% of the vote.
Dane St. Clair won because everybody wants us to try to trade for Dane St. Clair. That's why.
It's not happening. I remember watching the entire draft that year, thinking that we were going to take him first, and we didn't. That was our opportunity to get Dane St. Clair.
We knew about podcasts on TFC and draft picks
we knew the potential then, and it was agonizing to watch because I was like, we're already seeing a sharp decline in Bones and Q. This is a Canadian guy that we could get on the cheap in the draft. We're high enough in the position. He's right there, and we didn't take him. I don't think we're seeing him in a TFC kit. I think his next stop is Europe. He's possibly too good for MLS. And, our own goalkeepers got 33% of the vote. So, I'm an agent of chaos. So there I am doing my work again. Jordi Petrovic got 18% of the vote, which is understandable. He had a lights out season this year for New England. And then the only one that was that even came close to Dane or Jordi was Sean Johnson. Which is interesting because Sean Johnson, Bill Hamid got 1 vote, so he had 1%. Tristan Henry, you didn't even vote for, so it had 0% of the vote. Sean Johnson's still playing football. NYCFC are into the conference finals. Yeah, he's a free agent, but I don't think we're even going to get a sniff at trying to get him.
I wouldn't necessarily.
I don't see NYCFC not giving him a giant bag of money to.
I can't see them making him a DP. So, I mean, how much of a bag of money can you possibly give him if you're not going to make him a DP, right? There's only max TAM.
Well, then, we have no chance in hell.
Yeah, we'll have money for that. It's possible.
We're not making him a DP either. If NYCFC is offering him max TAM, and so are we, why would he come to us?
He might like the project. He might like the opportunity to play with Bernardeschi and Insigne. He might see what the club's trying to build from a long-term perspective, and he's a key part of. He's going to be a massive part of that. That might be. And look, we'll see how far NYCFC go. They're reigning cup champions. They may get to the next round if they beat Philadelphia and they get to a cup final again. Maybe he says like, "Look, I've done everything here at NYCFC." They revolve coaches every single season. So
we don't have a stadium.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have a stadium. There's a lot of reasons.
Good show, Graham.
There's a lot of reasons for him to potentially leave NYCFC, especially if he gets the bag here and is in part of building a new project here at TFC. And he's still a relatively young goalkeeper. I know he's in his. I think that's
rose. I think that's rose-colored glasses.
Look, probably. Yeah, I mean, to say that you're not going to have a shot at him. No, I think they have a shot. Will it happen? I don't know, but I think they
have a shot if they offer him a DP slot. But I don't think that's happening. So then you're competing with every other. You're competing with every other club in MLS, and you're competing with clubs in Europe. Not necessarily the giant clubs, but I'm sure he'll get a few sniffs here and there. I maintain that the smart play here is going after a second string keeper, maybe even in the top 5 leagues, flexing our muscle that way, offering them a max TAM contract. Excuse me, $1.6 million and seeing what we can shake out of that tree. Moving on, the Maxi Urruti Award for most underrated TFC player. Got a frog in my throat. I voted Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, and I had to add in coveted by Europe, relegated to bench duty here. But your shout is really interesting, and I'd like you to explain it.
Yeah, so I went with Shane O'Neill. Look, this is a guy that when they were signed, I don't think they had any plans. And Bob Bradley says at the end of the year, right? There was no plans for Shane O'Neill to play as many minutes as he ended up playing and essentially becoming a starting center back on the team. But the fact that he was able to come in and look, partly because the guys around him were not playing well, but also the fact that he was able to be a somewhat steadying presence until a couple of injuries down the end of the season kind of curtailed his form a bit. But I thought he was pretty underrated and not and obviously it's kind of one of those things where if he's playing and the less you hear about him, probably the better. In terms of that. So that was my shout in terms of underrated player.
And it's a fair shout, but the winner, and interestingly enough, the vote's very split, but with 27% and the win, it's Jacob Schaffelberg, which I can see as a pretty clear. I mean, this is a TFC fan blog, and TFC fandom is still pretty upset about that move. Let's not debate.
Yeah, let's not go.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is what it is. But Jacob Schaffelberg, pleased to award you the Maxi Urruti Award, most underrated TFC player for what's probably your last season with the Reds, 2022.
Good for him. He goes to Nashville, gets playing time, gets to play in his winger position, which he was not going to.
Exactly. Here comes the inverse, the All For Me Award for the most overrated TFC player. You said Quentin Westberg, which I think is really, really interesting. So I'd like to cede the floor to you to explain that shout.
Yeah, simply put, Quentin Westberg, look, as again, fantastic person. He had a really great run in the second half of 2019 and 2020, and then that was about it, right? And again, this more speaks to our overall goalkeeping situation than necessarily Quentin Westberg directly himself. In a sense that Alex Bono had a bad run. Everybody's like, Quentin Westberg's the answer. I'm like,
this is what I thought.
He's
this
not
is
the
why
answer.
I thought you said
no one's the answer right now. They're both not the answer, right? Like, but at the end of the day, I feel like that shout happens so many times. It's kind of like
so often.
It's not. And to be perfectly honest, with Alex Bono and Quentin Westberg, all of it does not fall on them. A lot of this falls on your defenders.
But I figured your award was based on that every time Bones had a howler, people were like, well, Westberg would have saved that. And it got exhausting after a while. It's like, and then he put him in and he had a howler. And it's like, well, it's because he hasn't had enough minutes. Sometimes it's exactly as it looks. And it's that they're just both fell off a cliff and unfortunately were incapable of doing basic goalkeeper things. So I figured that was why your shout was there. Yvonne is bringing up Daniel Henry, and it's interesting because once again, no one that works at WTR mentioned Daniel Henry, which I can accept as
real what did you really
expectation
when you got here?
Yeah.
He was going to be the fourth center back, maybe.
Yeah. And then we didn't get any flack other than Yvonne right now with respect to not including him there. There was only 2 picks for Jesus Jimenez. I think I win, and I'm pretty sure I did win this one because my pick was, and I'll read it verbatim, LOL, how quick we forget the strange adventures of Carlos Salcedo as our CBDP Prepperidge Farm remembers. And that won. Salcedo with 28% of the vote. So, not a lot of people saw through your Quentin Westberg intrigue. It was only 1 vote. I was right up there with 20%. Jesus Jimenez, 9%. Michael Bradley, of course, gets 13% because there are a certain contingent of TFC fans that are going to hate on Bradley for every reason. Shaquille and Jaden with 11 and 18 apiece. I don't know if we need to go into any lurid detail about why Salcedo was my pick. And I think we all know that there are reasons that weren't specific to the pitch as to why he left. I actually applaud the move. When people were screaming bloody murder when we did the swap of Twinkle Toes mixed step over and Salcedo, people were lamenting that we had to give up a DP spot to a center back. And I was saying this is the right idea. This guy checks off all the boxes. And in addition, gets Salcedo out the door as quick as possible. So that's why he was most overrated for me because, he came with such plaudits. And what we saw, despite all the external stuff, wasn't even a tenth of that player's ability.
But I would classify that in the same way I classify Quentin Westberg. Like, yes, he had some howlers, and for sure the red cards became a bit of a problem.
A huge problem.
But all of that, it was not on him. A lot of the times he ended up being exposed by, bad turnovers in the midfield.
And I agree with you, but my line for personal responsibility versus collective responsibility is a little bit different with a player of his pedigree. He is supposed to make the other players around him better,
fair.
As a veteran presence like that. I mean, that is a reason that you give a DP slot to somebody on defense. And that was another reason why I applauded the move. I was like, we're going in half-baked to this season. We're guys like Shane O'Neill, Luka McNaught. These guys are going to see a lot more minutes than they should have, knowing full well that Mavinga has an injury history even before this campaign started. And so the expectation was, maybe converting every single young guy we have to a modern attacking fullback might be less painful because we have this steadying hand at the back. And there was no steadying hand at the back, right? So my margin for somebody like a McNaughton, getting found out and exposed is very, very different than a Salcedo, who's supposed to have enough skill and enough tactical nous to maybe insulate from looking that completely exposed. Didn't happen. So that's why he wins for me. And it looks like 28% of WTR readers agree with me. So Carlos Salcedo, you get the All For Me award for most overrated TFC player of the 2022 campaign. Coming up is one that I really, really like because it speaks to the collected IQ of the WTR readership. And of course, it's the Torsten Frings Award for best player playing in an unnatural position. It also allows for some snark. Obviously, the first answer was Alex Bono, which is snarky as hell. I wrote Jaden Nelson, and I think it's, I've said it. I said it over the spaces I did. I've said it over the last 3 weeks as we do postmortems. He's, by leaps and bounds, the most impressive of the kids for me. Yeah. He found a spot in the midfield as a Swiss Army knife kind of position. This is a guy who's a natural winger. It's not easy to move into the midfield and create chemistry with other wingers when you want to be doing their things. Oftentimes, if you fall into habit, you'll be in Singha's like really bad shadow over there, right? Like you're taking up space. So watching him work and watching him sort of absorb, what we wanted our kids to do, absorb all of that knowledge and all of that intelligence. To me, there was nobody else came close. You wrote any of the kids, which I take issue with, but I'll go Kosi here.
Yeah.
Again, I think I realized that short socks and me equals like some kind of like sort of like gut reaction. No, don't like the player. Yeah. But any of the kids, Mike, any of the kids?
Well, I mean, look, a lot of them were playing in unnatural positions, man.
True. I guess, yeah. Okay.
It's hard.
Okay, that's fair.
Hard for me. It's hard to be like, well, you didn't really show us anything, when in fact a lot of them did improve in ways, but obviously not enough to really stand out as somebody that you're like, okay, we don't need to go in the offseason and find a veteran guy to fill that role, right? Just not enough. Maybe only Jaden. Okay. And even then he's coming off the bench probably next season. I went with Kosi as my overall pick just because I thought he progressed as a right back. And I mean, when I say progress, I'm not talking about beating out Richie Larea for the top job. I mean, progress in the sense that by the time that he lost his position at right back, because obviously you sign Richie Larea, he's not going to play minutes regularly. I thought that he had started to turn the corner a little bit in terms of becoming more positionally aware defensively. I think he had a lot to offer still going forward in terms of, or a lot to work on going forward from an attacking sense as a right back.
Yeah.
But those defensive things, like he got in battles and he won tackles, and that's kind of what you need to ask out of a right back.
Yeah, fair. Obviously, Jaden Nelson wins 30% of the vote. Jaden Nelson, congratulations for Torsten Frings Award for best player playing in a natural position. Goes to you. Moving on, another surprise. The Hey Mista Mista Award for Newcomer of the Year. It is...
almost a sweep.
Almost a sweep. And that was only because Thomas got cheeky and went for Crescido. It's Bernardeschi again. And I think we've said enough about this. This man really steamrolled all other comers in a year that wasn't expected. He was expected to be the second fiddle to El Magnifico, and it's very much the opposite. One of these days when we have a slower news day during the off season, I think we should discuss this in some real lurid detail as to what it is. I don't think we're going to come up with a better answer than you did. It is about the language barrier. It's about personality. It's about the expectation of cost outlay, and it could be a good thing for the club. And we may find that out next year that Lorenzo works better with less fanfare, and Bernardeschi just loves the spotlight. And there it is. But Bernardeschi, Federico, come on, you win the Hey Mista Mista Award for Newcomer of the Year. Well done, amazing. The next award. I don't think there's been a year that we've done this where he hasn't won in a sweep. It's the Downsview to Downtown Award for Best Canadian Player. It's Jonathan Osorio with 100% of the vote. There was no other option. Everybody that works at WTR made that pick. Not a surprise. I mean, eventually we might have to call, as much as I love the Downsview to Downtown Award name because it's beautifully alliterative and I loved coming up with it. We may eventually have to rename this the Jonathan Osorio Award, simply because it's his to lose every year. And he didn't lose it this year. Best player on the pitch for us. And then when he wasn't there, we really missed him.
Yeah.
And you can't say enough about this guy. And I am horrified what happens in the off season, because I want this guy to have an amazing World Cup, but I know that means he's gone. He's vapor. Someone's going to take a flyer on him in Europe, and this is what he wants to do, and we can't stand in the way. So, as you know, this may be the last year that he's even able to be nominated for this award. And congratulations are in order, Jonathan Osorio. Well deserved. The Downsview to Downtown Award for Best Canadian Player goes to you.
Before we move on really quickly, I really hope that the club are able to, if he does go, right, if he stays, incredible. But if he does go, I hope that they give the fans an opportunity to really say goodbye to him, because
I thought you were going to say a sell-on clause.
Well,
yeah.
But like, it just, obviously because of injury, we just didn't get to see him. And potentially say goodbye. So if he does, just hopefully we get an opportunity to do that, because really,
I can't see that not happening.
Deserve it. Yeah, he would.
Yeah, I mean, it may not happen instantaneously, but who knows? He may stay in Qatar and move directly from there to his next location. Who the hell knows? Trillium Cup Award for Best Rivalry was just a lot of really interesting, snarky little bits of snark. I'm going to give this to Chris Fung for Bob Bradley versus the squad he inherited, because I do think that that's the story of our season. And I do think that he was the arbiter of the squad he inherited. So there's a lot to unpack in that little bit of snark. But I do think that it's the best one there, and the less we say on, because it doesn't deserve a huge discussion. It's a bit of snark. This used to deserve better, but since TFC have been their own worst enemy, it's been an opportunity for us to get our most hot takes. A couple
extra kicks in.
Yeah, a few extra kicks in. The Meadowlands Massacre Award for Worst Game. There's some good shouts here.
There are some really good shouts.
You already gave us a lot of details on how the 2-0 loss to Chicago in July was your pick. The winner, strangely enough, was a game we haven't discussed yet, which was the 4-0 drubbing by Orlando City mid to end September. And I think the best write-off for that one, nobody really went into any detail. Yeah.
I think it's just it felt like the nature of the capitulation. Like it
really did.
I think that's the biggest thing. It just felt like everybody gave up once the first goal went in, and it just turned it turned into a nightmare after that.
Yeah, it really did. It was a heartbreaker, and it wins with, actually it's a tie. The 4-3 loss to CF Montréal at the beginning of September got the same amount of votes.
That would be the winner, to be honest.
Yeah,
I thought that was going to be the winner, especially when you're 2-0 up in 10 minutes, right, and give it all away.
That might be the winner for me. But again, the 4-0 drubbing, we were never ever in it. So it's a fair tie. I think they are both horrifically bad games.
Yeah, they are. But again, I'll give another shout out to the Chicago game, because they were bottom of the East, of the East, and we were never in that game.
Never in it.
Were we ever in that game? And that's, again, like I said, that's the moment where you're like, oh man, this is worse than I actually thought.
Yeah, 7% of the vote. So some people agreed with you. I don't think there's going to be any dissension here. The Miracle in Montreal Award for Best Game, Charlotte FC. I don't think we played a better game all season. I mean, that was vibes and a half, right? Like Bradley, striker Michael Bradley. We get our Italians playing. That was as close to the top of the line best 11 TFC fielded all year. Everything about it was magic, and I don't think the second best game of the year comes even close to the Charlotte FC game. So rightly, it wins with 73% of the vote. It's interesting, the game where we won the 2020 Can Champ didn't even get a single shout.
I think a lot of people don't view that as a legit
game.
Well, I know.
Soccer was played. A trophy was awarded.
People did not feel like it was a legitimate game or a legitimate cup. It was.
Of course it was.
And look, and in the end of the day, it's not your best game simply because let's be real, Forge probably should have won.
Mhm.
But in the end of the day, they didn't. And look, Charlotte makes complete sense. Like you said, vibes and a half
Mhm.
in that game, right? I
Yeah,
could feel it
vibes,
watching it on
pure
TV.
vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah, pure vibes. And we're rounding into the last two, which we don't allow votes on, so we get to choose. The Tom Anselmi Award for Best Front Office Achievement. Generally speaking, it's signing the Italians. We've got a shout for Richie, bringing him back on loan. We've got a shout that I agree with for getting Soteldo off the books. I wrote a really long answer. I say, honestly, for me, it's a tie between playing the kids, right or wrong, warts and all, playing the kids, and getting Pause off the books, pulling the trigger on Pause, maybe to our loss, but being brutal about it when we realized it wasn't working. And I'll add to that, it being in both cases being a harbinger of who we hired as our sporting director / gaffer. I saw those as signs of positivity of the Bob Bradley tenure, right? Like we are not going to have hanging variables anymore with the kids coming into the season, birthed by necessity, but certainly, necessity is the mother of all invention. And then with Pozuelo, just this ain't working. If he's got a destination, let's grease the wheels and get it done so that we don't have to burden ourselves with this anymore. But I think the winner is signing the Italians, despite,
It completely makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last award is the All for One More Dollar Award, which is the worst front office achievement. And I think we can go into a bit more detail here. Starting the season without any natural wingbacks, not replacing several outgoing players. No wingbacks had such a negative cascading effect through the lineup. Playing most of our academy players out of position and expecting better results. Maybe going a little overboard on the whole cleaning out things. There were tumbleweeds in the locker room at the start of the campaign. No wingbacks, playing the kids out of position. Not having a third DP. Signing a DP center back. And then you starting Jaquil Marshall-Rutty at right wing back and not a winger early in the season when you have Caden Chung. Not saying Caden would have been an all-star, but he would have been all right.
And look, I think there's a lot of commonalities here in terms of a lot of these issues that are being chosen connect with each other in some way, right? It goes from not having natural wingbacks. Well, that's because you gutted the roster the way you gutted the roster, right?
But starting the season without any natural wingbacks suggests, we had a choice in the matter, right?
No,
you don't want RO back if he's half-assing it in training, simple as. I don't care if it's costing you $5 and a Presto card, right? You don't want that player back. Same thing with Kamar Lawrence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, not replacing several outgoing players, I think is too binary for me, right? It's too knee-jerk for me because it suggests that you had these guys lining up at the pay window or, coming into BMO training. Let's go! When the reality was they weren't even there and someone had to call them 8 times and leave 18 voice messages like, did you get the dates wrong? Today's the first day of camp, So yeah. I eliminate a lot of those. Playing our academy players out of position and expecting better results, I think, is a fair shout. I do. But that's, again, necessity. And also, I would be willing to sit on the opposite side of that argument and saying, this is Bob Bradley going, eventually their spots are taken. So who do we have that we can slot in for squad roles once we get the ball rolling on this actual project? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. Bit of both. Right?
Yeah. I mean, why blood a left winger when you've got Lorenzo Insigne coming in the summer? You know what I mean? That just seems like a lot of wasted energy. Certainly, again, I could sit on both sides of the table here. I agree with you. It means you have a hole at left wing that everybody exploits for the first half of the season, which is what we saw. So what do you do?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I hear you, and I do think this is partly by design, right? I do think they realized that they were not going to be like top of the table competitive to start the season.
Sure.
I don't think what they realized was that they were going to be near the bottom by the time the reinforcements arrived in July. But Do I think it was a waste or that it was a bad idea to play the young
I don't.
players? No, I don't think it
Absolutely
was.
not.
Again, to your point a few awards earlier, right? You got to figure out who's going to stay and who's going to go. Right now,
For better or worse, warts and all.
worse, you
You
now
know
know.
what I mean? You know what I mean?
You know who
Listen,
you're keeping and you know who you're moving on.
we spent $14 million a year on Lorenzo Insigne. He is our starting left winger. So even if one of the kids had turned into a superstar starting left winger, that would have been a totally different box of trouble, right? Because where are you going to play them? You're looking for utility guys in the, and that's not necessarily fair to the academy kids. But again, I don't know if this is exclusive to TFC. You're coming through the academy at Bayern. You may not play your natural position, right? You're playing. You may be blooded in a position of need. That's just the way football works, right?
Yeah.
So I can discount most of this. I think the worst front office achievement, if I had to choose out of this, I would go with you. You have Caden Chung. He's a championship caliber player at the CPL. You've got Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, who's a converted attacking fullback. Obviously, there's interest from the Arsenals and the Liverpools that he trained with, who have designs on playing him in that position. So yeah, starting the season off with him, fine. Realizing that it's not working in an MLS context, realizing that it's not working in this campaign in MLS 2022, I think that's a bad move by the front office, because they're looking at his sticker price and saying, no, let's just let the kid figure it out, instead of looking at the performances on the field and going, not working, we've got a plug and play option, or at least somebody else where it's their natural position. Why don't we switch gears a little bit, right?
Yeah,
like you were saying, they looked at being not competitive the first season, but that extended in weirdo permutations where it's like, well, why not keep JMR out there so that maybe his value for the sell-on to the Arsenals and the Liverpools, as opposed to trying not to dig a huge gulf for ourselves, right? It suggests that lost season was on everybody's radar, not just the tacticians, right? It was on everybody's radar.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. One, Caden Chung got hurt, so have to admit that he got hurt for a bit, but also absolutely. And so did Jaden, and I think that put him back a bit. I think that put back his progression a little bit, and I think Bob spoke to that in the end of season press conference, right? So, from that perspective, you got to keep that in mind. But I would say that once Caden got healthy, like the minutes he played at the beginning of the season, again, not going to be an all-star, but if you got, again, as I know a lot of people got into this whole thing about Sam Skaichel and his tweet about how much TFC spent on the left and right back positions. If you got a player that can do the job and do it at a reasonable price at that time, just keep playing that guy, right? And he's going to make mistakes here and there, but that's somebody who is natural to that role. And I think you get more value out of Jaden Nelson playing him a little bit further. The whole price tag to Europe and $20 million. Look, I don't think Bill Manning should have said anything about that. I don't think he should have that up at all.
I think it was a self-defeating prophecy.
It just ended up getting way more attention than it actually should have deserved. Sure, somebody probably put that valuation out there. It means nothing right now. It means nothing.
People put evaluations out all the time.
For Jaden, you were not getting $20 million for Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy. That was not
right now. Nope.
I don't think it was happening back then. I don't think you're getting $20
million. Well, we'll never know.
Back then.
We'll never know. No. So yeah, let's give it to that. Although Chris Fung, who we'll have to have back on again, he's given us a bit of a scroller. I'm going to save that because I want Chris Fung on for a special post-mortem TFC talk, and I'm sure we'll bring up the kids. He's of the position that it wasn't. He's of the mind. It wasn't even just playing out of position. They were learning the rules of positional play at the same time.
Sure.
Which to me suggests, what is TFC 2 for? If they're coming in and they're that fresh, then what the hell are they doing in the academy and TFC 2?
If there's a different level between TFC 2 and the senior team.
But that's not. I agree, but that's not what Chris is saying in his scroller here, which is why I want to give him the opportunity to defend that position when we bring him on later. So, Chris, we'll be back on. That was already decided long ago. Let's close up the awards, and we've obviously gone late, so let's just
So just one thing, we'll keep the grading for Bill and Bob to the next show.
Okay, we'll get Singh's
we'll
show.
Do that.
Yeah,
we'll do that for
yeah,
we'll do
yeah.
that for the next show. I really want to get into this really
good.
quick as sort of an ender to the podcast.
Yeah, let's do it.
This social media banter thing that got brought up, obviously, as a lot of Montreal had lost yesterday against NYCFC and have been eliminated from the playoffs, 3-1 defeat at home. Toronto FC, the social gods, Giacometti, ended up putting a little something out there. Look, there was no text to it, but you know what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Stejko, who's a writer for The Athletic and quite knowledgeable in MLS, tweeted out, TFC spent at least 3x what Montreal did on players, finished 31 points behind them, and didn't sniff the playoffs, and still talks gifts. It's gift shit when Montreal loses in the second round of the postseason. He kind of loves it, but he also thinks it's ridiculous. So I want to put this out to you and to the TFC Live fandom. Are you feeling this, or you think it's kind of weak in terms
All
of...
is fair in love and war. All is fair in love and war. Absolutely. I mean, as long as you're aware that this is whiteboard material for a team that's going to be up to get you anytime they play. I mean, in terms of a risk reward, Montreal is always going to try and destroy us, anytime we face them. It's a derby. Of course you're going to troll. Absolutely. I would be upset if they didn't troll. That's just how it works. Banter and soccer is a very wonderful relationship that I think people, when they approach the game, realize, it's different here in soccer football than it is in other North American sports and most other sports internationally. Banter plays a big part of the experience of soccer fandom and the game itself. I think this is perfectly illegal. And I think, you quote tweet something on social media, you're doing it to sort of join the wave of interest, right? Whether you're saying this is garbage or it's the greatest thing in the world, there's an ulterior motive, right? You're dissenting it to all of your people for them to dissent it to all of their people, and he even says it so much himself. I kind of love it, but it's ridiculous. 90% of Twitter is ridiculous, right? I mean, we're there all the time. It's mostly ridiculous. It's whoever shouts loudest on the biggest soapbox. This is great. Who cares?
Yeah,
you know what fun. I mean? Who cares? The fact that TFC does it, knowing full well that a lot of the responses will be man, 3 times the wage bill, man, no playoffs, and we did it anyway. I mean, that's banter, right?
Oh,
Bring it on, Montreal.
Banter transcends places in the table.
Transcends all logic.
Transcends all logic. It doesn't matter.
If somebody gives you the opportunity, if somebody sets up that T-ball, boom, you got to go for it. 100 out of 100 times, and it isn't mean spirited. Sometimes banter can cross into mean spirited.
This is just having a laugh.
Yeah, we're just having a laugh at the expense of a team that this was their window, right? This was their window. Yeah. I mean, as much as I celebrated, to a lot of people's chagrin on the interwebs, what Wilfred Nancy and the Montreal did this season, this was their window. They're losing their talisman. They're losing Wanyama, who finally came into form after a few years of on and off form. Their roster is going to get shredded. This was the window. This was it. This was their chance.
Yeah, it will be a very
damn right. We're gonna jump in with the banter after they fizzle out. Damn right. And I still appreciate what they did this season. I still think they had a hell of a season. Hopefully they treat. I just wish it wasn't us dealing the death blow, because we still need revenge for that 3-0 festival of Didier Drogba, the first year we made the playoffs, right? Now that I've thought about it, if I was to respond perfectly, the jerk store called and they're out of you. If I was to the perfect George Costanza retort, I would say this team ended our first playoff run with a 3-0 defeat. There is, all bets are off. Until we get to do that to them, all bets are off. Yeah, we will celebrate them crashing out of the playoffs with bells on.
Time.
Pun fully intended.
Chat last week, right?
Pun fully intended. That doesn't mean I don't respect what they did this year. I'm a big enough fan of soccer and the Canadian national team to respect and good coaching, you know, and a team being turned around from bottom dwellers, right? We want the same thing to happen to us. But damn right, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon of giving them crap when it doesn't go well for them.
Yeah,
that's fandom.
Yeah,
We're number one rival.
You're talking about that 3-0 in Montreal. I was there. I was at Stade Saputo that night.
Sucked.
It
absolutely sucked.
It absolutely
sucked. Balls.
It
was
sucked.
horrific.
It sucked afterwards when fans jumped in the grass in the dark. Trust me, I will celebrate this tweet. I will raise it on a pedestal, and I'll lift it to the social media gods. It is perfect. It is perfect because, yes, you finished 31 points ahead of us. Yes, you got to a conference semifinal, but you know what you don't have? You don't have a star on your crest. As Jonathan Osorio
so aptly said. I've never seen an interview in a darker BMO. Like, they didn't even let the house lights on for TV to interview him. Like, just empty seats and like shadow everywhere. Like, and he just walks off. It's one of my favorite.
Tweeted the best response.
One of my favorite.
You don't have the star. You still don't have the star. Forever in the shadow. Good night.
We'll discuss it later. You know what else I love about this? There's still fun going on at TFC offices, right? This communicates that they haven't, it isn't scorched earth over there, and they're still allowing themselves to, be muckrakers, especially considering, what's been going on with Mavinga, like the season that we've had, right? They haven't closed up shop. They're still willing to be irreverent. That's awesome news, like they're still going to go for the cheap shot, which is perfect.
Completely fine with me. All right, let's wrap it up for this episode of Toronto Till I Die. Thank you, everybody, again for listening, whether you're live, whether you're listening to some podcast version. We really appreciate it. We will be back next week with another episode. Continue with those reviews and those likes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. They're really helping. We really appreciate it. And that's it. So for Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mike Newell. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Oh, man. Okay. Cheers.
And wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.